Today, we're talking about the latest update around the Chicago Bulls head coaching search. Next, we're going to be talking about another NBA draft prospect that could be available for the Chicago Bulls at pick number 15. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Pizzellus slam dunks in games, because in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it, as we're going to start with the latest coaching search around the Chicago Bulls. And so if you've not got a chance to see this, this is pretty much everywhere, but I saw this on ESPN. This is written by Shams. And so it says, sources, Magic finalizing deal to hire Spurs assistant Sweeney as coach. And so talking about Sean Sweeney. And so we've talked about Sean Sweeney a lot here. I think that he would have been a great head coach for the Chicago Bulls based off the experience that he's had and just really what he's doing with the San Antonio Spurs right now. I think he's doing a terrific job, really putting them into some great defensive sets out there. And also, too, he makes some adjustments on the offensive side of the ball for the San Antonio Spurs. And so I talked about that as well. And so, it looks like that the Bulls miss out on Sean Sweeney, but I still think that the Chicago Bulls are in a great situation right now. I think that they're still going to get an excellent coach that is going to be a first-time head coach for them. And I think, look, the Bulls, their situation, it's going to take a little bit more time to turn around, and that's okay. And I think that really, when you look at this hire with the Orlando Magic, I think that, Sean Sweeney maybe looks at the Magic and says, okay, this is more of a win now type of situation that maybe he wants to go into, because you still have Jalen Suggs, they have Franz Wagner over there. They've got Desmond Bain. They've also got Paulo. And so that roster pretty set. And I mean, look, even though the Magic had a disappointing playoff series against the Detroit Pistons, they were up 3-1. And so I'm not sure how they lost that series, but I think that you have to look at that and go, okay, you build upon that, you bring in a young coach that is showing what he can do with a young roster defensively and offensively as well. And so I could see why the Magic went ahead and rolled the dice here with Sean Sweeney. And so I think he's going to do an excellent job. He beat out Billy Donovan and Jeff Van Gundy for this coach, I think, or coaching position. I think that they were finalists there for that. But, just going to the Chicago Bulls again, I still think that the Bulls are in a prime position because, look, you still have Micah Nora. He's out there. You still have Tiago Splitter. You still have Johnny Bryant, and you still have David Bliss. Like, those are just a couple names here. And I do think that the Chicago Bulls are going to add some more names. And so speaking of adding some more names, it is going to get a bit more interesting here. And so I got this pop across my feed here, and this is by On3 if you want to read this. And so this is written by Nick Schultz. And so it's a terrific article because it talks about BYU coach Kevin Young. And so you get a chance to read the details of what he's done as a coach leading into his head coaching position here with BYU. But more importantly, this is out everywhere at this point in time of this podcast recording. But if you go into this article, you see the tweet from Jamal Collier of ESPN. And this is what he says. He says that the Chicago Bulls are casting a wide net for their head coaching search, which includes interest and early conversations with BYU coach Kevin Young, sources told ESPN. And so that was Jamal Collier who has put that into a tweet. That is once again in this article. And also, too, this is going to be in a lot of the articles that you're going to read about this. And so speaking of Kevin Young, look, I like this the more that I read about Kevin Young. And so Kevin Young, he has been in the NBA, and I think he's had some success here with BYU. And so just starting with his NBA experience. And so he's been an assistant coach with the Utah Flash. He was the head coach of the Utah Flash. Then he became the head coach of the Iowa Wolves. And then he also, too, was the assistant coach there for the Philadelphia Sixers. He became, I believe, the associate head coach for the Philadelphia 76ers. He would move on to the Suns, and then he became the associate head coach there before he took on the head coaching role here with BYU. And so talking about his NBA experience, I think that is one thing that number one really stands out here, is that he has had some NBA experience. And he is really, I think, been a coach that has locked into player development. So I'm seeing that with him. And so this is something that I think is critical for the Chicago Bulls and their next head coach. It's going to have to be somebody that has got it done from a player development standpoint. And so it certainly looks like he's done that. Next, look, he has been in the hunt for a head coaching job before. And so I'm seeing that he's interviewed for the Jazz, the Rockets, Suns, 76ers, the Nets, Hornets, Bucks, Wizards, and the Raptors there as well. Just didn't get the job, but he's been in the hunt. He's been trying to be a head coach here. And so, look, this could be an interesting situation if this does progress a little bit more. But once again, you can read about this on On3. I got to give them a ton of credit because it's a terrific article that talks about just really his experience as just an NBA coach leading into where he's at now. And then also, too, like I said, you go into that article, you'll be able to see this tweet from Jamal Collier. This is pretty much everywhere out there. But Kevin Young could be emerging as a candidate here for the Chicago Bulls head coaching job. And so let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. And then also, to let me know what you guys are thinking about Sean Sweeney taking the Orlando Magic job. And so lastly, wanted to talk about an NBA draft prospect and somebody that could potentially be at pick number 15 for the Chicago Bulls, and that is Morez Johnson. And so, look, I got a chance to see ESPN's mock draft. Currently, I think right now they have him going 17 to OKC, and so that's 2 spots after the Chicago Bulls. And so, look, I think that there is the real possibility that he could possibly be there. And so Morez Johnson Jr., if you're not familiar with who he is, 6'9", barefoot, 250 is his weight, 7'3.5" wingspan. He's got an 8'11" standing reach, 33.5 standing vertical, and a 39-inch max vertical as well. And so I think that he did a terrific job at the combine, really showing his skills, I think, as a shooter, and I think showing some more of the athleticism, which I think we got a chance to see, I think, throughout Michigan's run there in his college season there. And so, just looking at the strengths and just some of the things that he does. And so the first thing that really stands out with Morez Johnson is the elite athleticism. I think that you see a player that he can jump over a defender. Like, I love that. And I think defensively, you also see the athleticism and the range in the way that he's able to kind of switch, move his feet, and stay in front of his man that he's guarding. And so I think elite athleticism. Next is the physicality. So right there, you see him bullying in and just taking it right over his defender. I think that that's another thing that he certainly would bring. When you're talking physicality, I think that the Bulls would certainly need that. That is part of what Bryson Graham talked about with the slap thing. You need to have the physicality. So I think he has that. The next thing is he's got the mobility. And so he's got the motor and just really the energy and effort that he shows on the offensive and the defensive end. And so I think he can be a rim runner. I think he's a lob threat. I think defensively, he's going to be a hound out there. And so that's something that the Bulls would welcome. Next, he's a terrific rebounder. And then lastly, I love his instincts in the post. And so he has a pretty good feel for the post as far as sealing players, turning over the shoulders, and getting to, the basket and everything else. And so I think that those are some things that you like. And so, look, man, I think that there is a ton to like about him. And so when you take a look at the numbers, with Morez Johnson, I think that you see growth. And I think that that's really going to be the bottom line once we take a look at the weaknesses here for him. But 13.1 points per game. He also had 0.7 with the steals, 1.1 with the blocks, 7.3 with the rebounds. And so a terrific rebounder, 78.2% from the free throw line. That's huge because the season before that, played for Illinois, 61.8% from the free throw line. And so growth shown there. Rebounding, you see it there. Points went up as well. And then this was huge, which we're going to talk about this in a moment, but he shot 34.3% from downtown. Didn't have any percentage in year one with Illinois, 62.3% from the field, slightly down from his time with Illinois, but the minutes went up 25.1, and he played in 40 games as well. And so, look, here are the things that he's going to have to work on here. And so, number one, I think it's just going to be the jump shot. And so is the jump shot something that is going to be consistent? So I talked about the fact that he didn't have a percentage from downtown in his first season, but he shot 34% this last season. And you just wonder how real that is, right? Because it's a small sample size, but I must say, I like his shooting form. We're going to take a look here at what he looked like at the NBA Draft Combine. I thought that it looked pretty good. Next thing with him that is talked about in his Yahoo NBA Draft profile is that he struggled a bit with the turnovers there. And so 58 to 48. And so there was 53 turnovers to 48 assists, or 53 turnovers to 48 assists. And so the turnovers to assist ratio, you obviously want to have those down a little bit more. And so you wonder about the decision-making, especially when he gets maybe flustered in traffic and things like that. I think that that's something that he will grow a little bit more into. Next, the foul trouble. And so it looks like that his foul trouble actually increased or got better, I should say, from his freshman year. So he was up to about 5.7 his first year, but got down to 3.7 in his second year. And so, just staying away from the silly fouls and things like that, just some of the early observations there with him. But I think that the bottom line with him is that I just see a lot of growth with him. I think that this is a player that is nowhere near his upside, and I just would bet a lot on his upside at pick number 15. As far as like player comps, to me, he reminds me a little bit of a Paul Reed and a Naz Reid type of combination there. I think he can give you possibly that floor spacer and that physicality that you see in both of those players. And so, again, just taking a look at kind of how he looked at the NBA Draft Combine, like I think that his shot, it looked pretty good to me. And so if you're telling me that this last year he was just kind of stepping into this thing and just kind of really starting to kind of spread his wings as a jump shooter, look, I love that. I love the potential that he could be a floor spacer. I'm not saying that the Bulls have to have a center that's just going to sit out there and shoot threes, but the fact that he has a jump shot like this, look, you don't have to necessarily shoot threes. Can you hit the pick and pop? And I think that jumper right now looks like it can be that type of, jump shot for you. And so this is why, look, I love the upside here. If he's there at pick 15, wouldn't mind it to go along on your front line. And so, look, if the Bulls were to take a Cameron Boozer, or, if they were to go ahead and take Caleb Wilson and then add him on the front line and then go for the guards in the second round, I would be all for it. So you guys let me know in the comments here what you guys are thinking. Would you take Morez Johnson Jr. at pick 15 if he is available, or would you go a different direction there? And then also, too, going back to what we talked about with the coaches here, what do you guys think about Kevin Young possibly emerging here for the Chicago Bulls? Once again, this is from Jamal Collier of ESPN that tweeted that out. You can also read about this on On3. And then next, let me know what you guys are thinking about Sean Sweeney, now headed to the Orlando Magic. You can read about that on ESPN.com. That is from Shams. And so anyway, look, as we always say, go Bulls, and I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.